Good morning, guys. Today we're going to make a video showing the A77ii in action. I found an issue, or I've had an issue that since I bought this camera I noticed it was not as sharp as my original A77. I also shoot the A99 and a plethora of other cameras before that, so I noticed right away that the A77ii to me was not shooting as sharp as my A99 and my previous A77. After some testing I realized what was causing the issue is we have a stabilization system in the camera that has two settings. You can turn stabilization on, and then you can turn stabilization on with shutter. The with shutter option simply stabilizes your view in the rear screen and the viewfinder, so that when you're using a long lens like this 300 f4, it gives you a nice steady view and you can take the shot. It jiggles around if you turn it off. However, when I looked at I set up a test scenario last week to finally sit down and figure out what was wrong with the camera. I set up 12 different scenes inside the house, outside the house, different focal lengths, two different lenses, the 28-75 Sony and this 300 f4 Tokina, and I used different apertures, and for each scenario I kept the settings the same between the shutter on versus shutter off option, and I also did a no stabilization option. And in all 24 results, the shutter off was the worst result. Stabilization off was the worst result, and then followed by stabilization on with shutter on. That also degraded the quality, which was a complete surprise to me. I had had that setting on since I got the camera because I shoot a lot of long lenses, and I never would have thought that would be an issue. But today we're going to do a video and we're going to be able to zoom in on the timeline and show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. I tried to upload some of these images to Facebook. You can't see the quality, but on the originals it's very easy to see on screen how much quality you're losing, especially when you get up to those higher apertures. Wider apertures, there wasn't as much, you're not getting as much detail, so it was harder to see, but there was still a difference. So we're going to prove today that this camera anyways, and my shooting with it is not as good with shutter on. So you guys can have a field day, do your own tests and whatever after, but this will actually be able to look at images, not just talk numbers and what looked to my eye. You'll be able to see it with your eye and compare and see if you notice any difference as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first scene I'm going to shoot here is across the way, about 100 yards across there. My neighbor has a brick chimney and there's a brick at the front of his house. So I'm just going to show you guys how I'm shooting this. So I've got this set up so that we're going to use, I've got a 300 millimeter lens. I've got it set to 1/250th shutter speed, f8, and we're going to bump the ISO up to 400 just to give me a decent shot. And what I'm doing is I'm just focusing in here on the ground, 10 feet out, and then I'm going to go in here and then I find where I am. And I take my first shot, and that's with stabilization on and shutter on. And then I'm going to just repeat the process again with the stabilization on, but with shutter option off. And I'll show you guys in the menu here where you can find those two things right now. So if we open up the A77ii menu, and we're under the camera mode here, the first one, and you scroll over to page 8, you'll see on the bottom it says steady shot with photos is the first one, on. Steady shot with movies is the next one, which we're not interested in, but I'm just showing you guys where it is. And then if we scroll over to the right and we go to the settings menu all the way over to number 5, the very first one at the top is steady shot with shutter, and you can turn that off and on there. Okay, so what I've done is I've opened the first test scenario in PaintShop Pro X8, and I've zoomed into 100%, and I've lined up these two shots. This shot you're looking at is with shutter on, and then the shot underneath is with shutter off. And there is a huge discrepancy in quality there. Look at the blur all in through here. If you look at the bricks, I hope this is showing up on the camera. I'm not sure if you can see this. We're going to throw these in a timeline in Sony Movie Studio, and we're going to zoom into 100% level there as well. Maybe you'll see it better there, but this is how I compare shots. Line them up in Photoshop, exactly over top of each other, and if you click back and forth, you'll be able to tell differences between whether you're looking for a level change or a sharpness change or something like that. This is the way to do it. I'll show you again. This is image stabilization on with shutter on, and that's with the shutter off. And I can see here, it's a huge difference. On, off. Okay, so once again, I've got another one of the tests set up and zoomed into 100%, just to show you guys. I didn't think there was much difference on this one, but when you overlap them on the computer and do the routine, this is with shutter on, this is with shutter off. This is with shutter on, and if you look in here, in these areas over here, with shutter off, you'll see there is more fine detail. And this is the third test scenario. I just wanted to show you guys the whole image. You'll see them on the video slot, but what I'm doing is I'm just zooming in to 100%, and I know where I focused was right on this center line right here, and then I just click on the second one and I do the same thing, and then I just play with them until I get them lined up, and then I show you guys when I get them lined up what they look like. So here we go. I have them lined up with that top ridge. This is with shutter on, and this is with shutter off. Again, in this top layer right along here, there's quite a bit more detail, which is where I was focusing. Quite a bit more detail with the shutter off. There's shutter on. It almost has a blurry edge to it. And there's with shutter off. And it becomes nice and crisp. I mean, for a year I've fixed these photos in post-processing with sharpening, but you're not starting out with the best quality that you could with that shutter on. There's on, there's off. There's on, there's off. Okay, this next section is the pictures zoomed in the Sony Vegas timeline. This first one is with image stabilization shutter on. And we're going to show the next one with it off. There's with it off. And now we're going to switch back and forth between the two so you get a better view, a better comparison. Well, there you have it, guys. 3 different scenarios. You can clearly see that the stabilization with shutter on, it just adds a little bit of movement blur in there, which shouldn't be there. Anyway, my recommendation for myself is to turn that image stabilization with shutter option off, and I'm not going to use that. I can't see where having a stabilized view versus a nice sharp image at the end is the proper choice for myself, so I'm going to shut it off. Hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope you can see the differences on there, and we'll talk again.